The pounding of my door at 5 a.m. wasn't accidental. Heavy boots, multiple voices, and the metallic scrape of something against wood made my heart freeze as I peered through the curtains. 5 massive figures lurked in the darkness, faces swallowed by shadows. They weren't here for pleasantries. The way they arranged themselves around my property made it clear this was organized, deliberate, professional. Then came the demands that changed everything. But who sent them? And why target my ranch? Drop your guesses in the comments. 5 men in counterfeit security uniforms were banging on my ranch door at 7 a.m., claiming they were HOA officers conducting a mandatory inspection. The lead man flashed a badge that screamed fake, cheap plastic, wrong font, obviously counterfeit. "Sir, you must comply immediately or face legal consequences," he said, trying to push past me into my home. That's when my Army Ranger training kicked in, muscle memory from countless missions. I grabbed his wrist, twisted it behind his back, and he dropped to his knees, screaming like an injured animal. Another lunged at me. Big mistake. I ducked under his wild swing, swept his legs, and he slammed onto my porch so hard I thought the wood cracked. The remaining 3 suddenly remembered other plans, scrambling toward their van like roaches exposed to light. Tell Karen Mitchell. Her intimidation tactics don't work on a trained soldier. I called after them as their tires screeched across the gravel. But watching them flee, I realized this wasn't random harassment. They knew my military past, my property layout, even my schedule. Someone had been planning this for months. My 47-acre Tennessee ranch is valued at $450,000, prime development land. Clearly, someone wanted it badly enough to hire fake cops. The following morning, Karen Mitchell herself appeared on my porch, holding a plate of cookies and wearing a politician's campaign day smile. "Jake, I'm so sorry about yesterday," she said, her tone dripping with false concern. "As HOA president, I wanted to apologize for any confusion." Something about her voice set off every alarm my military training had wired into me. We sat on my porch, and that's when Karen's true intentions started slipping past the neighborly facade. "How long have you owned this property, Jake?" she asked. But her eyes weren't admiring the view. They were calculating acreage. "I heard you served our country. Army, right?" Her words weren't gratitude. They were confirmation of intel she'd already gathered. Then came the invasive questions that made my skin crawl. "Do you have family who might visit? Children who might inherit someday? What's this property worth in today's market?" There it was, the money question, delivered with all the subtlety of a jackhammer. Red flags multiplied. Karen knew my property lines perfectly, referenced easements I'd never mentioned, casually dropped knowledge about local development opportunities that weren't public. "Do you always jog at 6 a.m.? she asked, smiling that same fake smile. I realized she had been observing me, mapping my routines like a predator. She mentioned neighbors' properties in precise detail. The year a house was built, square footage, things not in public records. I looked at her cookies again, realizing they were a prop. The sweet smell masked the faint scent of the plastic file sleeve in her bag. In the military, details matter. Karen didn't just know facts. She controlled the tempo. She asked, stepped back half a pace, nodded as if confirming what she already knew. "Beautiful place," she said, but her eyes weren't on the view. They followed the power line along the tree line, a spot that could be labeled a safety hazard if someone wanted a reason. I fired one question back. "Have you been here long?" Her smile tightened. "Long enough to care. Experience taught me. Curiosity and predation feel different. Curious people linger. Predators measure boundaries." Her head tilt revealed tiny reflections of my fence corners. She'd walked the line before knocking. Her rhythm never faltered, even when I went silent. Liars stumble. Authority wannabes stay steady. I knew the visit was a test, gauging how far she could push. Then Sarah Williams arrived, still in her sheriff's deputy uniform from the night shift, and everything shifted. Sarah immediately noticed Karen's probing technique. "Ma'am, those are awfully specific questions for a neighborly visit," she said, polite but firm. Karen's mask slipped for a second, a flash of cold calculation, before the fake smile returned. "I have obligations to ensure community compliance. Karen snapped, voice sharp as broken glass. She brandished a folder, citing HOA bylaws for annual inspections and threatening thousands in fines. Sarah, a seasoned cop, immediately spotted the fraud. Real HOA bylaws don't grant such authority, and she recognized fake paperwork from a mile away. Karen escalated subtly, implying concern over my mental state. I just worry about everyone's safety, especially with Jake's military background, she said, insinuating that PTSD could affect the community. Her friendly advice felt like a threat. Jake, I hope we can resolve compliance issues before next week's mandatory HOA meeting. After she left, Sarah pulled me aside, her expression serious. That wasn't a neighborly visit, Jake, she warned quietly. She was profiling you for something, and it's not good. Sarah spent the next hour quietly combing through recent HOA activity on her laptop, and what she uncovered made it clear we were dealing with something far bigger than overzealous neighborhood management. A disturbing pattern emerged. Specific homeowners were being targeted, and every one of them was a veteran owning high-value property. The puzzle pieces were coming together, revealing a picture I dreaded but could no longer ignore. Karen wasn't just nosy or power-hungry. She was hunting, and veterans like me were her preferred prey. Sarah's investigation unearthed something that sent chills down my spine. 3 other veterans in our county had endured identical harassment campaigns, and all 3 had mysteriously lost their homes within 6 months. Using her law enforcement access, Deputy Sarah Williams dug deeper into Karen's claims, looking into HOA documentation that should have been straightforward. Instead, she uncovered a sinister network spanning the county, a web designed to ensnare veterans. Sarah's instincts were right. This wasn't about community compliance. It was a calculated, profitable scheme. She tracked down the 3 veterans who had lost property due to Karen's bogus HOA violations, and their stories left me seething. Tom Morgan, a Marine, was forced to sell his $450,000 family property for just $190,000 over fabricated fence violations suddenly appearing in HOA records. Bill Patterson, an Air Force vet, watched his $380,000 home fall into foreclosure after $30,000 in false HOA fines multiplied like wildfire. Dave Miller, an Army vet like me, had to offload his $425,000 property for $200,000 to cover bogus emergency legal fees conjured out of thin air. Every case followed the same playbook: harassment, intimidation, financial pressure, and then a forced sale far below market value. That's when the harassment hit me directly. Certified mail deliveries arrived, like declarations of war. The first batch of violations was so absurd, it would have been laughable if I weren't so angry. Unauthorized parking on my own driveway, a mailbox height violation that had gone unchanged for 10 years, and unapproved exterior paint, the same blue that had adorned my house for a decade. Each violation carried a $750 fine with a 48-hour deadline, as if Karen assumed I'd panic and pay immediately. Her surveillance escalated into a full-blown operation. Every morning at exactly 8 o'clock, she appeared at the edge of my property with clipboard and camera, documenting my ranch from every angle under the guise of compliance checks. She monitored everything: truck positions, fence conditions, even grass height, building a dossier far beyond normal HOA oversight. Watching her, I realized this wasn't amateur harassment. It was professional intelligence gathering. Sarah instructed me to log everything meticulously: time, position, camera angles, unusual sounds, repeated license plates. Every detail captured with a small atomic clock visible on the recordings. Boring, tedious work, but vital evidence for court. By the 3rd morning, Mrs. Henderson appeared beside Karen, clutching a trembling paper cup. I greeted her and avoided any confrontation, keeping it safe. "You still like the purple asters along the fence?" Her expression softened, then flicked toward Karen, as if seeking permission to respond. Karen wasn't just collecting signatures. She was collecting silence. When she lifted her camera, I held up a clean copy of the real HOA bylaws, flagged with Marcus notes, showing the clause prohibiting HOA agents from stepping onto private property. No one disputed it. That evening, I posted a small notice along the road. This area is recorded for livestock and property safety. The next morning, Karen was back. Same routine, but 2 steps farther from the property line. 2 steps might seem minor, but in a campaign, they change the ground. Meanwhile, Karen recruited neighbors into her psychological warfare. She spread poison about my character, warning Mrs. Henderson that my erratic behavior might harm property values, telling Mr. Davis that veterans with adjustment challenges could be dangerous, and implying to an elderly couple down the street that my property might be a problem for the community. Each conversation was calculated to isolate me. I called my cousin Marcus Thompson, a Nashville property lawyer specializing in HOA disputes. His reaction was immediate and chilling. "Jake, this is textbook property fraud," he said. "They're systematically targeting vulnerable homeowners, using fake legal authority to pressure them into selling." Marcus had seen operations like this before. Predators identifying isolated targets, manufacturing crises, and swooping in with below-market offers when victims were desperate. Refusing to pay the fabricated fines only escalated the threats. Letters arrived from a so-called HOA legal counsel, demanding immediate payment or threatening foreclosure within 30 days. The letterhead looked official, but Marcus instantly recognized it as part of Karen's elaborate scam. "They want you to panic and pay," he warned. "Don't give them a penny." Marcus advised a full evidence-gathering strategy, treating the scheme as the criminal conspiracy it clearly was becoming. Every alleged violation needed photographic proof of non-existence. Every interaction with Karen needed documentation. Every financial demand had to be recorded and compared against actual HOA bylaws. Every act of surveillance was logged for the harassment case we were building. With Sarah's law enforcement expertise, we set up procedures that would hold up in court. The situation inevitably escalated. The psychological pressure kept mounting as 2 more neighbors approached me, clearly influenced by Karen's poison campaign, urging me to resolve issues with HOA leadership. Sarah immediately recognized this as a classic harassment pattern, designed to exploit vulnerable individuals for financial gain. Her professional instincts screamed that we were facing organized criminal activity disguised as community governance. When I discovered surveillance cameras hidden around my property perimeter, the truth hit hard. This was no amateur harassment. Someone with significant resources was monitoring my every move. Marcus Thompson's financial investigation into Karen's background exposed a darker reality behind her friendly facade, far worse than either of us had imagined. Karen wasn't merely an overzealous HOA president. She was the owner of Community Solutions, LLC, a property acquisition company systematically targeting veterans across Tennessee for 2 years. Her secret partnership with Summit Development Corporation, dating back to 2019, meant she collected over $50,000 in consulting fees for each veteran property she acquired through harassment campaigns. She had turned veteran targeting into a profitable business, and she was exceptionally good at it. Marcus uncovered that Karen had orchestrated 8 veteran property seizures in just 2 years, pocketing over $400,000 while devastating the lives of those who had served our country. The financial trail was unmistakable. Veterans were harassed with fabricated HOA violations until they were forced to sell. Summit Development bought their properties far below market value, and Karen collected her blood money. Systematic, profitable, disgusting. Then the harassment escalated into outright criminal sabotage. My main water line was severed during emergency utility maintenance, leaving me without running water for 3 days while I scrambled to find emergency contractors. 12 of my cattle escaped onto the highway when all gates were mysteriously left open at night, creating a traffic nightmare and costing $1,500 in veterinary bills. My internet and phone lines were cut during routine tree trimming, isolating me when I needed communication most. Each incident was staged to look accidental, but the pattern was obvious. They were trying to bleed me financially while making life unbearable enough that I'd accept any lowball offer. Then came Rick Morrison, Karen's enforcement coordinator, arriving with his intimidation crew straight out of a gangster movie. Rick, a former mall security guard with a criminal record including assault and trespassing, brought 2 associates. Bruno Silva, an ex-bouncer with tree trunk arms, and Tommy, an unlicensed contractor who specialized in making problems disappear. These men weren't pretending to have authority anymore. They were hired muscle, and they made sure I knew it. Rick delivered his ultimatum with chilling professionalism. Mr. Thompson, Mrs. Mitchell is offering you $320,000 for your property, he said, standing in my living room as if he owned it. Summit Development will close quickly. Cash. No inspections, no complications. Take it, or things get more complicated for everyone involved. My 47-acre ranch was worth $450,000. His offer was 30% below market value. Highway robbery disguised as business. The legal intimidation intensified. Karen's fake HOA filed liens designed to create financial panic. $12,000 for supposed compliance violations, $8,500 for emergency maintenance costs they themselves had caused, and $15,000 for community legal expenses entirely fabricated. The total, $35,500, threatening immediate foreclosure if I didn't pay within 30 days. Pure financial terrorism. Karen orchestrated an emergency community safety meeting that was really a public character assassination. All 47 neighborhood families were invited, given misleading information about my mental health, and portrayed as a threat to property values. The topic was listed as addressing problematic property owner behavior, framing a veteran under siege as a dangerous criminal. The manipulation deepened. Vulnerable senior citizens were convinced I was a danger. 78-year-old Mrs. Henderson believed I might snap at any moment. 82-year-old Mr. Davis feared my military training made me a ticking time bomb. Karen weaponized their natural concerns to isolate me from any community support. The most damning evidence came when I discovered fresh survey stakes across my land. Proof that Summit Development had conducted unauthorized assessments in preparation to subdivide my ranch into 8 commercial lots valued at $2 million. Karen's $320,000 offer would have netted them nearly $3 million. Sarah faced professional pressure from her supervisor, who wanted her to avoid civil disputes and focus on traditional police work. But her instincts told her this was organized criminal activity, not a neighborhood squabble, and she refused to abandon a fellow veteran. Karen even tried to control public perception, contacting the local newspaper to pitch a story. Troubled veteran refuses community standards, threatens neighborhood safety. She sought to shape the narrative before I could expose her criminal operation, casting herself as the concerned community leader and me as the unstable veteran. I decided to counteract her manipulation with my own public response. I decided to fight back publicly, posting photos of the property damage on social media with a caption that told the story bluntly. This is what HOA compliance looks like. Karen Mitchell's harassment campaign included property damage and intimidation, and the post began spreading immediately. I could see her carefully constructed reputation starting to crumble under public scrutiny. When she realized my post was being shared hundreds of times, her face went pale. Desperation makes people dangerous. Have you ever dealt with an HOA overstepping its bounds? Share your experience below. Your stories could help other homeowners spot warning signs. At dawn, Rick Morrison returned to my ranch with his 3-man intimidation crew, claiming they were conducting a final compliance inspection. Immediately, I recognized them as the same fake officers from that first morning confrontation. These guys clearly hadn't learned their lesson about tangling with trained military personnel, but I was ready to remind them. This time, Rick's crew looked more confident, probably assuming they had better planning and backup. They had no idea of the tactical preparation I had made since our last encounter. Using my Army Ranger training, I turned my property into a defensive position that would have made my old drill sergeant proud. Security cameras covered every entry point. Motion sensors monitored the perimeter, and non-lethal defensive measures were prepared to stop intruders without permanent harm. Temporary discomfort, however, would be unforgettable. Sarah and Marcus were on call as emergency contacts, ready to respond if things escalated beyond my control. Marcus also reinforced the legal side. He sent a chain of custody checklist, which I taped under the main monitor. Before each watch, I read the time aloud, touched the sync tag, swept a full circle with the lens, and verified no third parties were in frame. Sarah suggested a safety passphrase for phone calls, something harmless to signal duress. Peach pie in September. I placed a backup mic behind the horse stall, capturing the blind path that intruders preferred. The drive was mirrored at Marcus's office via encrypted link. If the box got smashed, a copy would survive. At the gate, I hung a simple sign, private property. No authority. Do not enter. No threats, just facts. I wasn't looking to fight. I want a record. If they crossed the line, the court would see everything. The confrontation began when Rick's crew tried forced entry through my front door, assuming intimidation through aggression would work. I activated my recorded warning system. You are trespassing on private property. You have no legal authority here. Leave immediately or face the consequences. When they ignored the warning, I knew they had chosen their path. The first intruder was subdued with a joint lock, brought to his knees screaming while I held his arm at an unnatural angle. The second tried to assist, only to walk straight into a pressure point technique that dropped him to the porch, twitching in shock. The third looked at his partners writhing and chose discretion over valor, retreating to the van while I maintained control of the other two. Multiple camera angles captured the encounter perfectly, evidence any prosecutor would love. After the confrontation, Karen's campaign escalated to severe property damage designed to drain me financially. My septic system failed, requiring $8,500 in emergency repairs to prevent raw sewage from backing up. My solar panels were mysteriously damaged despite clear skies. Another $8,000. A runaway truck demolished 300 yards of fencing, totaling $25,000 in repair costs. Insurance would likely contest. The claims due to suspicious circumstances. Marcus launched a legal counterattack with a federal lawsuit targeting Karen and her crew. Criminal harassment under color of law carried serious federal penalties. Intentional infliction of emotional distress would hit them financially. Property damage and conversion claims would hold them accountable for every dollar of harm. RICO conspiracy charges framed the operation as organized crime, with penalties capable of destroying their lives. Karen's PR war went into overdrive when a local newspaper ran a story labeling me a troubled veteran threatening community safety. But I had evidence and truth slices through propaganda. I released full security footage online, showing Rick's crew committing crimes while I responded with measured professional self-defense. Public opinion shifted rapidly as people could see the truth. At the emergency HOA meeting, Karen tried to portray me as dangerous and unstable. I played the footage, revealing who the real criminals were. Several neighbors, previously influenced by Karen's manipulations, realized they'd been duped by a master con artist. A vote to remove Karen from the HOA presidency was scheduled for the following week, and she could see her power crumbling. Sarah compiled detailed police reports documenting every act of harassment, property damage, and criminal trespass by Rick's crew, creating an official record to support our federal case. Despite pressure from her superiors, she refused to abandon a fellow veteran to criminals using fake authority. Her reports were meticulous, devastating Karen's claims of legitimacy. The community began to split into two camps. The neighborhood had split into two clear camps, those still believing Karen's lies about veteran mental health, and those beginning to understand they'd been living next to a criminal operation disguised as community governance. Property owners started asking tough questions about HOA finances, wondering where their dues had been going and whether Karen had been misappropriating community funds for years. The foundation of trust her operation had relied on was cracking. Evidence kept mounting as other veterans came forward with stories of harassment and intimidation. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Karen's campaign wasn't limited to isolated incidents. It was a systematic effort targeting veterans across multiple counties. Each victim owned valuable property, had been isolated from community support, and had been pressured to sell below market to the same development company. The conspiracy was larger than anyone had realized. Legal momentum built as Marcus' federal lawsuit drew attention from attorneys specializing in veteran protection. The evidence package was overwhelming. Financial records, video documentation, witness testimony, police reports, and property damage assessments, all pointing to organized criminal activity operating under the guise of legitimate HOA authority. Meanwhile, Rick's crew sped away from my security cameras, unaware that Karen was already plotting a scheme that could either destroy me or spectacularly backfire. Her desperation reached new levels of criminal recklessness when she staged an elaborate false flag incident that would have made Hollywood screenwriters laugh. She orchestrated what looked like a violent attack by me during a property dispute, complete with self-inflicted injuries and coach witnesses who were about as convincing as high school actors. Karen literally injured herself to frame me, an act that revealed her unstable psychological state. Her over-the-top performance included tearing her own clothing, giving herself scratches and bruises, and practicing a victim routine in front of Rick and his crew, who were supposed to back her fabricated story. But she made one fatal mistake. My security system had been recording everything 24/7 since the nightmare began. Every moment of her performance was captured in high-definition video with crystal-clear audio, creating irrefutable evidence. The footage showed Karen arriving alone, walking into view of multiple cameras, intentionally injuring herself, and coaching her fake witnesses. "Remember, you saw him grab me and push me down," she instructed, unaware she was recording evidence of conspiracy to file false police reports. The cameras even captured her checking her injuries on her phone, adjusting her torn clothing for maximum effect, and practicing her victim voice before calling 911. Meanwhile, I was clearly inside my house, visible through the kitchen window, making coffee and reading the morning news. Karen's media contacts immediately ran with her version, publishing a story titled, "Dangerous Veteran Attacks Elderly Neighbor," painting me as an unstable menace. For about 6 hours, she probably thought her plan was foolproof until I released the full security footage online. The video went viral, generating millions of views as people watched Karen commit multiple felonies while trying to frame a veteran for assault. Public outrage exploded, and opinion shifted so dramatically that Karen went from community leader to public enemy overnight. Comments poured in from other veterans who had faced similar harassment, sparking a national conversation about property fraud targeting military families. Marcus expanded the legal counterattack into a comprehensive federal case. He added false police report charges carrying serious jail time in Tennessee, defamation claims for the deliberate destruction of my reputation, and an emergency restraining order to keep Karen and her associates away from my property. Punitive damages would hold her financially accountable for every day of harassment, intimidation, and property damage she had caused. The public community meeting I called became Karen's worst nightmare. I presented clear evidence of her criminal operation to neighbors who had been manipulated for years. Financial records showing her partnership with Summit Development Corporation and the $50,000 she earned for each veteran property she helped acquire. Video footage proving systematic property damage. Testimonies from other veterans describing identical harassment campaigns. And bank records documenting unexplained income coinciding with forced property sales. The evidence was overwhelming and indisputable. Karen's psychological collapse unfolded in front of 47 neighborhood families. Confronted with video evidence of her fraud, she screamed, "You people don't understand. These veterans are easy targets. They're isolated, they have valuable property, and they don't know how to fight legally. Summit Development pays me $50,000 per property because I deliver results no one else can achieve." Her confession was recorded on multiple phones and became critical evidence in the federal prosecution that would send her to prison. Rick Morrison cooperated with federal investigators almost immediately, recognizing that conspiracy charges for targeting protected classes carry decades in federal prison. He provided prosecutors with detailed instructions Karen had followed in her scheme. Rick Morrison provided federal investigators with every piece of information Karen had given him for her harassment campaigns. Financial records detailing payments he'd received for intimidation services, names of other HOA officials involved in the conspiracy, and evidence of similar schemes in neighboring counties. His testimony revealed that Karen's operation was far larger than we had imagined, targeting veterans across multiple states with identical tactics. The veteran community rallied around my case like nothing I had ever seen, turning my personal fight into a national effort to protect military families. The VFW established a legal support fund, giving us the resources to fight Karen's criminal organization with top-tier attorneys. Media interviews allowed me to warn other veterans about property fraud schemes, helping them recognize warning signs before they lost their homes. Connections with other victimized veterans across the country created a network of witnesses and evidence for federal prosecution. Templates for fighting HOA abuse were distributed to veteran organizations, providing families tools to protect themselves from similar attacks. Sarah Williams received official recognition for her investigative work. Despite the career risk she had taken in exposing criminal activity disguised as community governance, her superiors eventually acknowledged that she was investigating organized crime, not interfering in civil disputes. Her dedication to protecting a fellow veteran earned commendations. Advancing her career, and the sheriff's department publicly supported her efforts, promising increased attention to veteran protection cases. Federal investigators discovered that Summit Development Corporation had orchestrated similar schemes in 12 states, generating over $30 million in fraudulent property acquisitions by targeting veterans isolated from legal support. Their stock price collapsed when the investigation became public, and executives faced federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Karen's scheme was not just local. It was part of a national conspiracy defrauding veterans of their property rights. Community support rallied around my case as neighbors apologized for believing Karen's lies and demanded accountability for the criminal organization operating in their midst. The neighborhood voted unanimously to remove Karen's entire criminal network from HOA leadership and elect veteran-friendly representatives who would protect property rights rather than exploit them for profit. With Karen exposed and Rick cooperating, I thought the worst was over. But federal investigators had uncovered something that changed everything. This conspiracy extended far beyond Tennessee. Investigators revealed a systematic network targeting veterans across 12 states for more than 5 years. My case was just one arm of an organized crime enterprise that had stolen properties worth over $30 million from veterans who had trusted their communities. Karen Mitchell's arrest at Nashville International Airport was cinematic. Federal marshals, fake passports, and suitcases full of cash. She carried $180,000 stolen from HOA accounts, planning to disappear to Costa Rica, where extradition would be difficult. Her fake passport identified her as Catherine Morrison, and documents in her luggage outlined real estate investments funded entirely by money stolen from veterans. The federal task force dedicated to veteran protection coordinated multi-state investigations, uncovering a staggering scope of fraud. 47 veteran families were identified as victims across the Southeast, with total losses exceeding $12 million. Summit Development Corporation had been operating since 2019, targeting veterans in high-value suburban areas. Each case followed Karen's same playbook: fake HOA authority, property damage to create financial pressure, isolation from community support, and forced sales below market value. My neighborhood underwent a complete transformation once criminal influence was removed. An emergency HOA vote ousted Karen's corrupt board and installed honest, veteran-friendly leadership. All stolen HOA funds were returned to legitimate community projects, and property values soared as the artificial pressure from Karen's harassment vanished. Federal court delivered comprehensive justice rarely seen in organized crime cases. Restitution restored every veteran victim financially and emotionally. Tom Morgan recovered his $450,000 Marine family property, plus compensation for losses during Karen's harassment. Bill Patterson regained his $380,000 Air Force retirement home with full damages for illegal foreclosure. Dave Miller had his $425,000 Army Memorial property returned with compensation for forced sale losses. I received full market value for my 47-acre ranch for $150,000 plus $125,000 in punitive damages for months of harassment, intimidation, and property damage. Summit Development Corporation collapsed swiftly. Federal prosecutors seized over $45 million in assets to compensate veteran victims. The CEO received an 18-year federal prison sentence and forfeited all personal wealth, including luxury homes, investment accounts, and business interests built on stolen veteran properties. All fraudulently acquired veteran properties were returned to their rightful owners or families, ensuring justice and restoring the lives Karen had tried to destroy. The harassment campaign was permanently halted, and every parcel of land that could be restored to its natural state was returned. Sarah Williams' career skyrocketed after official recognition for her excellence in criminal investigation. She was promoted to detective lieutenant and authorized to create a statewide veteran protection unit to prevent similar crimes from ever happening again. Her training program for identifying veteran-targeted fraud schemes became mandatory for law enforcement officers across Tennessee, and she became an expert witness in similar cases nationwide. Her courage in risking her career to protect a fellow veteran became a model for ethical policing, inspiring policy reforms throughout the criminal justice system. The legal precedent established by my case created new federal protections that would shield veterans from property fraud for generations. The Veterans Property Protection Act passed Congress with overwhelming bipartisan support, instituting federal oversight of HOA targeting practices and criminal penalties specifically designed to deter veteran exploitation. A $100 million federal fund was established to assist veteran fraud victims with legal representation and financial recovery. Military transition programs now include mandatory warning sessions about property scams, ensuring veterans know how to recognize and resist such criminal operations. Community healing in our neighborhood became a national example of how communities can recover from organized crime once they understand how they've been manipulated. A public apology ceremony honored my service and acknowledged the injustices I had suffered at the hands of Karen's lies. A veterans memorial was dedicated in our park to recognize all military families and their sacrifices. Annual veteran appreciation events were established to ensure military justice had been served comprehensively, but the most satisfying moment was still ahead, seeing Karen face the consequences of targeting the wrong veteran. Veterans nationwide could see that standing up could protect entire communities. The federal courthouse in Nashville was packed with veteran supporters, family members, and media representatives when Karen Mitchell was sentenced for her systematic campaign of exploiting veterans. She received 12 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, elder abuse, and targeting protected classes. Her financial punishment was as thorough as her prison sentence. $3 million in restitution to all veteran victims, forfeiture of every asset, and a lifetime ban from HOA activities or property management work. Rick Morrison received a 7-year federal sentence and $500,000 restitution, along with a permanent ban from security work. His cooperation with investigators had reduced what could have been a 20-year term, but he would still spend his prime years in prison, reflecting on the choice to prey on veterans instead of protecting communities. Summit Development Corporation's executives faced the harshest sentences as masterminds of a national conspiracy. The CEO received 18 years in federal prison and forfeited $45 million built entirely on stolen veteran properties. Other executives received 12 to 15 years, ensuring decades behind bars for all who participated in the scheme. Corrupt HOA board members received 2 to 5-year sentences and financial penalties severe enough to bankrupt them. Lawyers who enabled the fraud were disbarred and prosecuted for ethical violations, ending their careers. National policy reforms stemming from my case now protect veteran families for generations. The Veterans Property Rights Protection Act created federal oversight of HOA targeting, mandatory reporting, and criminal penalties for discriminatory enforcement. The $100 million federal fund guarantees legal representation and financial recovery for veterans facing property fraud. My advocacy as a national spokesperson for veteran protection allowed me to testify before Congress, demonstrating how organized criminals exploited fake legal authority to steal from those who served our country. FBI consultations across the nation now help federal agents recognize the warning signs of veteran-targeted property fraud, ensuring no other military family suffers as we did. The signs and patterns of organized veteran targeting became a blueprint for prevention. Over 200 veterans reached out directly for assistance after learning about my case, and each received guidance in fighting property fraud schemes. Sarah Williams' Specialized Veteran Protection Unit became a statewide model, inspiring other law enforcement agencies to train over 500 officers in recognizing veteran fraud schemes and preventing property theft before families lost their homes. Her rapid response protocols created a network that covered the entire state of Tennessee. National recognition followed, with Sarah consulting on HOA abuse investigations across the country, spreading strategies to protect veterans everywhere. Marcus Thompson expanded his legal practice into veteran property law, developing a template for other attorneys and establishing pro bono funds for threatened veterans. His legal strategies returned $127 million to victimized families nationwide, proving that holding criminals accountable could restore wealth and stability to military families. Training programs for lawyers specializing in veteran protection law ensured expertise will be available wherever military families face property threats. Our community's transformation into a veteran-friendly neighborhood attracted military retirees seeking safe places to invest their service benefits, creating a positive cycle that strengthened property values and community support for military families. National media coverage highlighted our neighborhood as a model for successful HOA reform, showing how communities could recover from criminal leadership and create supportive environments for veterans. Educational initiatives reached millions of military families through retirement seminars, case studies, military justice courses, and documentary films, teaching them to recognize and resist property scams before becoming victims. These prevention programs are estimated to have saved $200 million in veteran property losses. Karen Mitchell's complete downfall, from respected community leader to federal prisoner, served as a cautionary tale. Targeting veterans for profit always ends in failure. But the true victory wasn't financial or legal. 6 months after Karen began serving her 12-year sentence, I received a call that made every moment of harassment, intimidation, and property damage worth enduring. Tom Morgan, the Marine veteran whose family home had been the first Karen had stolen, told me his grandson would grow up in the same house where Tom's father had raised him after returning from World War II. 3 generations of Marines living in the same home, preserved because one Army Ranger refused to be intimidated by criminals who thought veterans were easy prey. My 47-acre Tennessee ranch had become more than a home. It was a symbol of resistance against veteran exploitation and a sanctuary for military families seeking safety. The Thompson Veteran Property Rights Center now operates out of my renovated barn, providing free legal consultation nationwide. Monthly workshops teach veterans how to recognize targeting schemes, understand their legal rights, and build community networks to protect themselves from predators like Karen Mitchell. Sarah Williams and I were married in a small ceremony on the ranch she helped me defend. Surrounded by veteran families whose properties had been saved, our wedding became a celebration of justice, integrity, and community. Marcus Thompson served as my best man, and the outpouring of support from neighbors and veteran victims created a powerful reminder that love, honor, and perseverance can triumph over greed and criminal conspiracy. The neighborhood's recovery exceeded every expectation. Property values increased by 35% after the artificial depression caused by Karen's harassment campaigns was eliminated. Our community became a model veteran-friendly neighborhood, attracting military retirees seeking safe investments and reinforcing a culture of integrity, resilience, and mutual protection for all who call it home. The signs and patterns of organized veteran targeting became a blueprint for prevention. Over 200 veterans reached out directly for assistance after learning about my case, and each received guidance in fighting property fraud schemes. Sarah Williams' Specialized Veteran Protection Unit became a statewide model, inspiring other law enforcement agencies to train over 500 officers in recognizing veteran fraud schemes and preventing property theft before families lost their homes. Her rapid response protocols created a network that covered the entire state of Tennessee. National recognition followed, with Sarah consulting on HOA abuse investigations across the country, spreading strategies to protect veterans everywhere. Marcus Thompson expanded his legal practice into veteran property law, developing a template for other attorneys and establishing pro bono funds for threatened veterans. His legal strategies returned $127 million to victimized families nationwide, proving that holding criminals accountable could restore wealth and stability to military families. Training programs for lawyers specializing in veteran protection law, insured expertise, will be available wherever military families face property threats. Our community's transformation into a veteran-friendly neighborhood attracted military retirees seeking safe places to invest their service benefits, creating a positive cycle that strengthened property values and community support for military families. National media coverage highlighted our neighborhood as a model for successful HOA reform, showing how communities could recover from criminal leadership and create supportive environments for veterans. Educational initiatives reached millions of military families through retirement seminars, case studies, military justice courses, and documentary films, teaching them to recognize and resist property scams before becoming victims. These prevention programs are estimated to have saved $200 million in veteran property losses. Karen Mitchell's complete downfall, from respected community leader to federal prisoner, served as a cautionary tale. Targeting veterans for profit always ends in failure. But the true victory wasn't financial or legal. 6 months after Karen began serving her 12-year sentence, I received a call that made every moment of harassment, intimidation, and property damage worth enduring. Tom Morgan, the Marine veteran whose family home had been the first Karen had stolen, told me his grandson would grow up in the same house where Tom's father had raised him after returning from World War II. 3 generations of Marines living in the same home, preserved because one Army Ranger refused to be intimidated by criminals who thought veterans were easy prey. My 47-acre Tennessee ranch had become more than a home. It was a symbol of resistance against veteran exploitation and a sanctuary for military families seeking safety. The Thompson Veteran Property Rights Center now operates out of my renovated barn, providing free legal consultation nationwide. Monthly workshops teach veterans how to recognize targeting schemes, understand their legal rights, and build community networks to protect themselves from predators like Karen Mitchell. Sarah Williams and I were married in a small ceremony on the ranch she helped me defend. Surrounded by veteran families whose properties had been saved, our wedding became a celebration of justice, integrity, and community. Marcus Thompson served as my best man, and the outpouring of support from neighbors and veteran victims created a powerful reminder that love, honor, and perseverance can triumph over greed and criminal conspiracy. The neighborhood's recovery exceeded every expectation. Property values increased by 35% after the artificial depression caused by Karen's harassment campaigns was eliminated. Our community became a model veteran-friendly neighborhood, attracting military retirees seeking safe investments and reinforcing a culture of integrity, resilience, and mutual protection for all who call it home.